My father-in-law banned me from the family business meeting until the board of directors arrived. The mahogany table had been in the Blackwood family for 3 generations, which Douglas never failed to mention whenever anyone entered the conference room of Blackwood Industries. He was mentioning it now, running his hand along its polished surface while his sons, Trevor and Marcus, settled into their usual seats like they owned them. "Wives don't belong in business discussions," Douglas declared, pointing to the door with the authority of a man who'd never been challenged in his own domain. "Go help in the kitchen, Samantha. Helena's making coffee." His sons nodded in perfect synchronization, the way they'd been trained to since childhood. Trevor even had the audacity to pat my shoulder consolingly as I stood to leave. "It's nothing personal, Sam," he said, using the nickname I'd specifically asked him not to use. "Dad just prefers to keep business and family separate. You understand?" I understood perfectly. For 4 years of marriage to Marcus, I'd understood that Douglas Blackwood saw me as an accessory to his son's life, not a participant. The fact that I had an MBA from Wharton meant nothing. The fact that I'd worked at McKinsey before we married meant nothing. To Douglas, I was just the pretty girl who'd married his youngest son and should be grateful for the privilege. "Of course," I said quietly, gathering my portfolio. The one containing the quarterly reports I'd prepared, the strategic analysis Douglas would claim as his own, the solutions to problems he didn't even know existed yet. "And Samantha," Douglas called as I reached the door. "Make sure Helena uses the good china. We have important calls with investors later, and I want everything perfect." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. "The investors aren't calling, Douglas. They're coming here." He laughed, that dismissive chuckle that made my skin crawl. "Don't be ridiculous. I would know if investors were visiting. I am the president of this company, after all." President. Not CEO, never CEO, because that title belonged to someone Douglas had never bothered to properly investigate when his father had sold the company 7 years ago. Someone who'd been content to let him keep his honorary position and family legacy intact while they rebuilt the company from the shadows. "My mistake," I said simply, stepping out of the room. Helena, Douglas's secretary of 30 years, looked up from her desk with sympathy. She'd seen this routine before, me being dismissed, sent away like a child while the men discussed important matters. "Coffee?" she asked gently. "No," I said, checking my phone. "But you might want to prepare the boardroom. We're having visitors in about 10 minutes. Helena frowned. "Mr. Blackwood didn't mention." "Mr. Blackwood doesn't know," I interrupted. "He's about to learn something important about his company." Through the glass conference room walls, I could see Douglas holding court, his sons taking notes dutifully as he pointed at charts he didn't understand, discussing strategies that would have bankrupted the company if anyone actually implemented them. The company his grandfather had built, his father had expanded, and he had nearly destroyed before the board had made a desperate decision 7 years ago. Sell to a private equity firm. Keep Douglas as a figurehead president to maintain the family image. Let him think he was still running things while real leadership happened elsewhere. That private equity firm? It was mine. Well, technically it was a shell company I'd created with my trust fund and some very strategic loans. MS Holdings. Everyone assumed it stood for some faceless Wall Street firm. It actually stood for Martha Samantha, my full name that I'd been going by professionally since before I'd met Marcus. The doorbell rang. Not the casual ring of a delivery, but the purposeful announcement of people who expected to be admitted immediately. "I'll get it," I called to Helena, who was still frowning at her appointment book. 12 people stood at the entrance. The full board of directors of Blackwood Industries, minus Douglas, who'd been told this was a routine quarterly meeting happening next month. They filed in with the gravity of people about to change someone's life. CEO Blackwood, Jonathan Winters, the board chairman, greeted me formally. "Thank you for calling this emergency session." "We're here for the emergency meeting," CEO Blackwood called, someone said, loud enough to carry through the building. They all looked at me, waiting. Through the glass, I saw Douglas freeze mid-gesture. His face cycled through confusion, annoyance, and then anger as he stormed out of the conference room. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, looking at the assembled board members. "I didn't call any emergency meeting. And I certainly didn't authorize." He stopped, noticing how they were all looking at me, not him. "Samantha." Marcus had emerged behind his father, his face pale. "What's going on?" Jonathan Winters cleared his throat. "We're here at CEO Blackwood's request to discuss the immediate restructuring of company leadership." Douglas's face went red. "CEO? I think you're confused, Winters. I'm the president. An honorary title, Winters interrupted, pulling out a document. As per the acquisition agreement from 7 years ago, the actual CEO and majority owner is Martha Samantha Blackwood, née Harrison. The silence that followed was absolute. That's impossible, Trevor stammered. She's just Marcus's wife. I'm also the person who bought your family company when it was 3 months from bankruptcy, I said, finally letting years of suppressed frustration color my voice. The person who's been actually running things while Douglas played president. The person who turned a failing manufacturing firm into a tech industry supplier worth 10 times what it was. Douglas's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. UMS Holdings. Surprise, I said flatly. Marcus stepped forward, his face a mixture of confusion and betrayal. Sam, I don't understand. We're married. You never said. I tried, I interrupted. Remember when we were dating, and I told you I was in acquisitions? Remember when I said I was involved in a major deal with a manufacturing company? Remember when I tried to join these meetings with actual proposals and strategies? But you never said you owned the company. Because every time I tried to talk business, your father sent me to the kitchen. Every time I offered input, you all patted me on the head and told me not to worry my pretty little head about it. You made it clear that wives don't belong in business discussions. Jonathan Winters stepped forward. Mrs. Blackwood has been remarkably patient. She's allowed Douglas to maintain his position and dignity despite having full authority to remove him at any time. But recent events have made restructuring necessary. Recent events. Douglas was still reeling. I pulled out my portfolio, the one I'd tried to bring into the meeting. You mean like Douglas attempting to sell our patent portfolio to Jow Industries without board approval? Or Trevor establishing a competing company using proprietary information? Or Marcus funneling company funds into his personal trading account? All 3 men went white. You knew? Marcus whispered. I know everything that happens in my company, I replied. I've known for months. I was hoping you'd come to me, confess, try to make it right. Instead, you continued to treat me like the help while stealing from the company I rebuilt. But I'm your husband. Marcus protested. Which is why you're getting the chance to resign quietly instead of being prosecuted, I said. All 3 of you. This is ridiculous. Douglas exploded. This is Blackwood Industries. It's been in my family for 60 years. It was in your family, Winters corrected. Until you ran it into the ground with outdated practices and refusal to adapt. Mrs. Blackwood bought it fair and square, kept you on as a courtesy to family tradition, and turned it into something remarkable. The New York Times called us the comeback story of the decade last month. That was her doing, not yours. Helena had appeared in the doorway, no longer looking sympathetic but satisfied. I've been sending her reports for 7 years, she announced. Every meeting Douglas held, every decision he tried to make, every dismissive comment about his daughter-in-law. She knows it all. Douglas turned to me, his face purple with rage. You've been spying on us. I've been running my company, I corrected. You've been playing businessman with Daddy's legacy while I did the actual work. Every major deal you thought you closed. I set it up. Every crisis you thought you solved. I handled it before you even knew it existed. But at family dinners, Trevor said weakly, you never said anything when we talked about the business. Because you never actually talked about real business, I replied. You talked about your fantasy version where Douglas was a titan of industry instead of a figurehead I kept around out of respect for your grandfather, who was actually a brilliant businessman. The board members had filed into the conference room, taking seats around the mahogany table Douglas was so proud of. Winters gestured for me to join them. We have several matters to discuss, he said formally, including the transition plan and the press release announcing CEO Blackwood's official public role. Public role? Marcus echoed. I've been running things from the background for 7 years, I explained. Out of consideration for your family's reputation. That ends today. As I moved toward the conference room, Douglas found his voice again. You can't do this. I'll sue. I'll fight this. Winters handed him another document. Your employment contract, which you clearly never read properly. It explicitly states that the CEO, that's Mrs. Blackwood, has full authority to terminate your position at any time. You've been serving at her pleasure for 7 years. Why? Douglas asked, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely bewildered rather than angry. Why let me think I was in charge? I paused at the doorway. Because I loved Marcus. Because I thought eventually you'd see me as more than just a wife to be dismissed. Because I hoped that one day you'd notice that every successful decision supposedly made in this room actually came from the reports I slipped Helena, the strategies I whispered to Marcus, the problems I solved before they reached your desk. You've been protecting us, Marcus said, realization dawning. I've been protecting the company, I corrected. And the 800 employees who depend on it. The same employees you never bothered to learn the names of, Douglas. One of the board members, Patricia Chen, spoke up. For what it's worth, Mrs. Blackwood's leadership has been exceptional. We've known her identity for 3 years now, and we've been consistently impressed by her strategic vision and execution. 3 years. Douglas sputtered. You've all known for 3 years. We insisted on meeting the actual CEO, another board member explained. Imagine our surprise when it turned out to be the woman you kept sending to fetch coffee during our meetings. I remembered those meetings. Being asked to serve refreshments while the board discussed strategies I'd developed, watching them praise Douglas for my ideas while he preened like a peacock. The Zhao Industries deal, Douglas said suddenly. You sabotaged it. I prevented you from selling our core technology to a Chinese competitor for a fraction of its value, I corrected. The patents you wanted to sell for 10 million are worth 200 million. I know because I developed half of them, personally. You? Trevor laughed bitterly. You're telling us you developed technical patents. My MIT degrees are in engineering and business, I said. The patents are registered under MS Holdings, but yes, I personally developed our flagship automation systems. The ones you've been taking credit for at industry conferences, Trevor. The room fell silent again. Marcus sank into a chair. Our entire marriage, was it just to get the company? For the first time, I softened slightly. No, Marcus. I already owned the company when we met. I fell in love with you despite your family, not because of it. I kept hoping you'd see me as an equal partner. Instead, you saw me as your father taught you to see all wives, as decorative support staff. If we had known, Douglas started. If you had known, you would have treated me with respect. I finished. That's the problem, Douglas. You should have treated me with respect regardless. The fact that I'm CEO just makes your disrespect more embarrassing for you, not more wrong. Helena handed me a tablet. The press release is ready for your approval. I scanned it quickly. Send it. And Helena, thank you for everything. When this is over, we need to discuss your promotion to Chief of Staff. Helena beamed. Douglas looked like he might faint. You can't promote my secretary. My employee, I corrected, has been for 7 years. Just like you. The board was settling in, pulling out laptops and documents. Real business was about to happen, the kind Douglas had been pretending to conduct for years. I believe you 3 were asked to leave, Winters said pointedly to Douglas, Trevor, and Marcus. As they filed out, broken and bewildered, Marcus turned back one last time. Sam, Martha, whoever you are, was any of it real? My love for you was real, I said quietly. Your inability to see me as anything more than an accessory was also real. The question you should ask yourself is why you needed to find out I was a CEO before you considered treating me as an equal. He had no answer to that. As the door closed behind them, I took my seat at the head of the table. My seat. The one I'd earned through years of work, of building this company from the ashes of Douglas's mismanagement. Now, I said to the board, let's discuss the real business. The Tokyo expansion, the new patent applications, and the strategic partnership with Tesla that I've been negotiating. The Tesla deal. Patricia's eyes widened. Douglas said that fell through. Douglas never knew it existed, I replied. I've been handling it personally. Elon and I had dinner last week. He's very interested in our battery technology. As we dove into actual business, the kind that involved real numbers, real strategies, real consequences, I thought about the years of family dinners where I'd sat silently while Douglas held court about his business acumen. The years of being dismissed, overlooked, sent to help in the kitchen while the men talked. They'd never suspected that the woman they kept sending away was the one keeping them all employed, successful, and out of federal prison for their various schemes. My phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. Divorce papers ready when you are. I set it aside. There would be time for that later. Right now, I had a company to run. Openly, proudly, and without ever again being told that wives don't belong in business discussions. Because this wife didn't just belong in the discussion. She owned the entire conversation. And the building it was happening in. and the three-generation mahogany table that Douglas loved so much. That table would look perfect in my new office. The one with CEO on the door.